Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys That Magic. This is Hunter coming at you with another deck tech. That is right. We are going to be taking a look at a new legendary creature from Duskmourn, and I'm going to be building a deck around it. This creature means a lot to me because it's something that really popped out the moment I saw it, and I was like, okay, that's a little bit of a different direction, because if you've been watching the channel long enough, you know I love to win with combat damage. I love to win with just damage in general, really. But this is a bit of a different lane, but also kind of the same lane. So we're playing with Azorius. That's right, that's white and blue. But before we get into the card itself, which you already know, it's down in the description. You clicked on the title, you saw the thumbnail, whatever. I just want to remind everybody to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, so you're staying up to date with everything that got going on. And it also shows that you guys want more of these kind of videos. So let's go through this 100 card deck using, of course, Niko, Light of Hope. So Niko, Light of Hope is 2 white blue for a 3/4 legendary creature human wizard. It says when it enters the battlefield, create 2 shard tokens. In case you don't remember what shard tokens are, they are enchantments with pay 2, sacrifice as enchantment, scry 1, then draw a card. So just a little bit of a way to kind of manipulate the top of your deck to get what you really want in that turn. It has another ability. You can pay 2, tap it, exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control become copies of it until the beginning of the next end step. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So, like I said, we kind of are playing with that strategy that I love, and that's doing damage. So we're going to be blinking a bunch of stuff. We're going to be making ETB triggers happen over and over. And then once we blink our commander enough times, we're going to have a lot of shard tokens as well. So we're going to turn those shard tokens straight into some kind of scary creatures that we got going on in the deck, swinging in for that lethal damage, killing all of our opponents. I'm very excited about this. I'm actually going to build this in paper myself. I can't wait. So let's go ahead, without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to talk about some Planeswalkers first. So we got 3 Planeswalkers to start it off with. The first one, obviously, I'm a Niko deck, so you got to put the original Niko, right? So this is Niko Eris. It's X white, 2 blue. For starting loyalty of 3, it says when it enters the battlefield, you create X shard tokens. It's got a +1 ability that says up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. And whenever that creature deals damage this turn, return it to its owner's hand. So gets us in for some damage, also bounces it back to our hand to recast stuff, giving us little extra triggers there. A -1 that says Niko Eris deals 2 damage to target tapped creature for each card you've drawn this turn. And a -1 that just says create another shard token. So Niko's really in here just to increase those shard tokens. Also, if it's ever late game, like I said, that +1 ability will get in for damage. It'll be great. The Eternal Wanderer is also going in here for 4 and 2 white for a starting loyalty of 5. It says no more than 1 creature can attack the Eternal Wanderer each combat, which is great, 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 because we have extra ways to protect the Eternal Wanderer with just 1 creature coming at us. It's got a +1 that says exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of that player's next end step. So if we needed to bounce one of our things, get a little blink trigger going, or if something's in the way of our attacks, we can get rid of our opponent's thing as well, just as a little pesky blocker. A 0 ability that says you can create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with double strike. And a -4, which is its ultimate, that says for each player, choose a creature that player controls. Each player sacrifices all creatures they control not chosen this way. So a little bit of a board reset there. We kind of pick all of our opponent's least effective creature, destroy the rest if we're in trouble. Venser the Sojourner is 3, a white and a blue for a starting loyalty of 3. It's got a +2 ability that just says exile target permanent you own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. That is permanent, which is great because that means we can do it to any of our enchantments that we might have, any creatures that we might have, any artifacts that we might have that have just extra triggers, anything. Just bounce it. A -1 that says creatures are unblockable this turn, so it takes Niko Eris up a level, giving everything unblockable. So just really just go ahead and turn everything into a scary creature with all of our shards and swing in for lethal damage and win that way. And a -8 that says you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, exile target permanent. If we can ever get that, that's fantastic. We're just going to be casting spells and exiling all of our opponent's things, including lands, if we really wanted to be mean. Let's talk about some of the smaller creatures, a little bit of a utility, if you will. A little bit of card draw, a little bit of mana base, all that jazz. Ornithopter of Paradise has to go in the deck, right? We just need a little mana dork, and being in white and blue, we don't have access to the green dorks. So Ornithopter of Paradise is 2 mana for a 0/2 artifact creature thopter. It's got flying, you can tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spirited Companion is 1 and a white for a 1/1 enchantment creature dog. It says whenever it enters, you draw a card. Flicker that if you need to. Aether Channeler, 2 and a blue for a 2/1 creature human wizard. It says when it enters, choose 1. You can either create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying, you can return another target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, or you can draw a card. So the CTBs do one of those things that you really need at the time, maybe draw a card, and then flicker it, do all that shenanigans. Dowerport Mage is also really important in this deck. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/3 creature frog wizard. Whenever one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card. And it has another ability to pay 1 and a blue, tap it, return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. A little bit of protection there with the 1 and a blue as its ability, but that first part, we're going to be flickering stuff, which means they are leaving the battlefield without dying and coming back, and when they leave, we draw cards, and that's important. Time to move on to some creatures that actually provide that flicker effect more than just our commander. We've got Displacer Kitten up first with 3 and a blue for a 2/2 creature cat beast. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that to the battlefield under its owner's control. So if we play any of our spells that kind of flicker, we can do an extra flicker with Displacer Kitten. Soul Herder is 1, a white and a blue for a 1/1 creature spirit. So whenever a creature is exiled from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Soul Herder. It also says at the beginning of your end step, you may exile another target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Flicker effect at the end step is fantastic. Just flicker whatever we need at the time. Thoughts of Deep Dwelling is very similar for 3 and a blue for a 6/5 legendary enchantment creature god. It's got indestructible, and it says as long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa is not a creature. And at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. You can also pay 3 and a blue to tap target creature. So if we are at late game, use that 3 and a blue and just continuously pay down and tap all of our opponent's things to get in for lethal. All right, now it's time to get in some good flicker targets. That's right, we've been doing the flicker thing so far. Let's start flickering stuff, but first we'll take a look at some brand new cards from Duskmourn that fit perfectly into this deck. So first up is Fear of Sleep Paralysis. It's 5 and a blue for a 6/6 enchantment creature nightmare. It's got flying and it has Eerie, which means whenever it or another enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. It also says stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponent's control. This card is awesome because it's a great flicker target. I mean, you can go ahead and just flicker this over and over. Every time it enters, you're going to be putting stun counters on more of your opponent's stuff. Stun counters can't be removed. That's what makes this card so great. And also, if we're flickering our commander every time an enchantment enters, which is shards, 2 enchantments, 2 triggers on sleep paralysis. The synergies here is fantastic. And those shards later can become these 6/6 Fear of Sleep Paralysis, even more. Swing in, deal damage. Another new card that's really good in this deck is Ghostly Dancers. 3 and 2 white for a 2/5 creature spirit. It's got flying and it says when it enters, return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand or unlock a locked door or a room you control. It also has Eerie, which means whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 3/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So if something died because this is a heavy enchantment deck, go ahead and bring it back from the graveyard to your hand. Also, we can flicker this. So if some more things died that we want back, just go ahead and flicker this and bring it back. And once again, shards are enchantments. So if we are flicking our commander, those shards come in 2 shards at a time, 2 3/1s at a time. I'm here for it. The final 2 brand new cards I want to talk about are the Overlords of our colors. So Overlord of the Flood Pits is 3 and 2 blue for a 5/3 enchantment creature, Avatar Horror. It's got Impending 4 for 1 and 2 blue, which means you can cast this for its impending cost, and it comes in with 4 time counters on it, but it is not a creature. It's got flying, and it says whenever it enters or attacks, you draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Another fantastic flicker effect. If we have any of those flicker effects that say we can bounce a non-land permanent or just permanent, we can bounce this, it turns into a creature if we cast it for its impending cost, which is fantastic. Also, we can turn all of our shards into these Overlords, which really makes things scary because they have an ETB and attack triggers. Watch out. Overlord of the Mistmoors is also here for 5 and 2 white for a 6/6 enchantment creature avatar horror. It's got impending 4 for 2 and 2 white. And it says whenever it enters or attacks, you create 2/2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying. So both of these overlords are going to get out of hand very quickly, and especially if we can turn all of our shards into one of them, watch out. We are a problem. Moving on to some older kind of cards, but are still great for flickering. Charming Prince is up first. 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature human noble. It says when it enters the battlefield, choose 1. You can scry 2, or you can gain 3 life, or you can exile another target creature you own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. So flicker this, flicker something else with that third part. Lauren of the Third Path is great removal. It's 2 and a white for a 2/1 legendary creature human artificer. It's got vigilance. It says when it enters the battlefield, you can destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. As another ability, we could tap it, you and target opponent each draw a card. If you really wanted to help someone, make a deal at the table to draw cards. Sun Titan, 4 and 2 white for a 6/6 creature giant. Vigilance. Whenever it enters or attacks, you may return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard straight onto the battlefield. So if we had anything that goes away, bring it back with Sun Titan. Flicker this over and over. Turn our shards into a 6/6 vigilance. That's pretty good to me. Tax Collector is 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature human advisor. It says when it enters the battlefield, choose 1. You can do tax, which is until your next turn. Spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast. Would be a shame if we flickered that a couple times. And you have Arrest, which means detain target creature an opponent controls. What does that mean? Well, until your next turn, that creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So you're really shutting down your opponent's worst creature. Archaeomancer is 2 and 2 blue for a 1/2 creature human wizard. It says when it enters, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a great card to flicker, and not only just flicker, but get our other flicker spells that we've already used back into our hands to continue the flicker madness. Moving on to some other creatures that are just good ETB effects, not necessarily doing it themselves, but it helps our deck function a little more. So, Archon of Sun's Grace is great here. It's 2 and 2 white for a 3/4 creature Archon. It's got flying, it's got lifelink, and it says Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. It also has Constellation, which means whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you make a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. We are a heavy enchantment deck, which is great here, which means our shards entering will make 2/2 Pegasus creatures. So every time an enchantment comes, we're making Pegasus. Ondu Spirit Dancer is 4 and a white for a 3/3 creature core cleric. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, you may create a token that's a copy of it. Do it only once this turn. That is a very powerful effect, because if we have any of our overlords onto the field, those are enchantments. We will make a copy of them. They will come in. It will get crazy. It'll be fun. Preston the Vanisher is 3 and a white for a 2/5 legendary creature rabbit wizard. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't cast, you create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 0/1 white illusion. You can also pay 1 and a white, sacrifice 5 illusions to exile target non-land permanent. That last part, while it's awesome, you can go ahead and really, if like you're in a pinch, you can get rid of a bunch of illusions that you created. But I'm really hoping to flicker my stuff and make a bunch of copies of them. I keep saying it's going to get out of hand, but it is. Preston the Vanisher is great here. And here's the moment you've all been waiting for. This is the things that we are turning our shards into. We are going to get scary. We're going to make a lot of shards, and then boom, nobody's going to know what to hit them. Ancient Gold Dragon is 5 and 2 white for a 7/10 creature Elder Dragon. It has flying, and it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. And then you create a number of 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens with flying equal to the result. If we have multiple of these on the field at once and we're swinging at our opponents, I think we might just win that way. But at the same time, we can also make a ton of those 1/1 flyers based on how many of these ancient gold dragons get in with damage. Angel of Destiny is 3 and 2 white for a 2/6 creature angel cleric. It's got flying and double strike, and it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. And then at the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 more life than your starting life total, each player Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game. This just wins in one turn if we have a lot of shards on the field. We will be doing a lot of damage. If we get over 15 more than my starting life total, then we just won the game because we attacked everybody. So yay us. Battle Angels of Tyr, 2 and 2 white for a 4/4 creature angel knight. It's got flying and myriad. If you don't remember what myriad is, basically if you attack one player, you make a token copy that is a copy of Battle Angels of Tyr swinging at the other opponents that you're not attacking, which gets crazy. If you have a bunch of shards that turn into this, then it's just exponentially insane. But it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if that player has more cards in hand than each other player. Then if you create a treasure token, if that player controls more lands than either player, then you gain 3 life if that player has more life than each other player. We're probably going to do all 3 of those unless we're just absolutely just winning. That would be just winning more. We would just win the game at that point, I feel like. But yeah, Battle Angels of Tyr, if we can get all of our shards into this, look out. Hammers of Moradin is 2 and a white for a 3/3 creature dwarf cleric. It too has myriad and says whenever it attacks, for each opponent you tap up to 1 target creature that player controls. Once again, if we get our shards into this, pretty much the whole board is going to be wiped out. Hullbreaker Horror, 5 and 2 blue for a 7/8 creature Kraken Horror. It's got flash. It says this spell can't be countered, and whenever you cast a spell, you choose up to 1. You can return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or you can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Can you imagine if we have a lot of Hullbreakers on the field and we cast 1 spell? We're pretty much bouncing all of our opponent's board. So that's a fun one. And a new card as well going in here is Lionheart Glimmer, 3 and 2 white for a 2/5 enchantment creature Cat Glimmer. It does have Ward 2. And it says whenever you attack, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So if we make our shards into Lionheart Glimmers, that +1/+1 turns into however many shards we have. It'll get crazy. And finally, these final 2 creatures I'm throwing in here just kind of help our deck as well. Mondrak Glory Dominus, 2 and 2 white for a 4/4 legendary creature Phyrexian Horror. It's as if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control. Twice that many of those tokens are created instead. As an ability, you could pay 1 and 2 white Phyrexian mana. Sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures. You put an indestructible counter on Mondrak Glory Dominus. I'm throwing Mondrak in here because we are a kind of token creator with our commander when it comes to shards. Anointed Procession is another card you can throw in here. This is not in this deck. We are keeping this budget in between $300 to $400 like we do for all of our decks. So I'm only throwing in Mondrak here. Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, 4 and a white for a 4/7 legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor. It's got Vigilance, and it says if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And it also says permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents control to trigger. Very menacing to our opponents. We are very mean. Any ETB effects will not happen for our opponents as long as Elish Norn is on the field. And all of our ETB effects, which there are plenty you've seen so far, they now happen twice. Moving on to the sorcery department of our deck, we only have 3 sorceries in the whole deck, so let's talk about them. Supreme Verdict, 1, 2 white and a blue sorcery. It can't be countered. Destroy all creatures. This is my favorite board wipe in white and blue, and it goes in every single one of my deck that I play. Having an uncounterable destroy effect is too good not to put in. Another round is XX2 and a white for a sorcery. Exile any number of creatures you control, then return them to the battlefield under their owner's control. Then repeat this process X more times. This card is just good for 2 and a white. If we have multiple things that have an ETB effect, and we can just play this for 3 mana, and blink as many things as we want for 3 mana, this is an easy spot in our deck. Hollowed Respite is white and a blue for a sorcery that says exile target non-legendary creature, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, otherwise tap it. It also has a flashback of 1, a white and a blue. This is fantastic just as to blink one of our things if we really needed it to, or we blink one of their things to get it out of the way. Moving on to the instant department, we are playing blue. So it's time to counter some stuff. First up, good old-fashioned counterspell. 2 blue mana for counter target spell. Easy, to the point, you know what it does. Dovin's Veto, white and a blue. Instant, this spell can't be countered. Counter target non-creature spell. And of course, good old-fashioned negate, 1 of the blue, counter target non-creature spell. Moving on to some removal of his deck, you do see Cyclonic Rift here. I do like at least 2 kind of board wipes in the deck. You saw Supreme Verdict, so we are throwing in Cyclonic. This is the best kind of board wipe you can. If you have a cheaper version, you can, but like I said, I had the room for my budget for 300 to 400. Cyclonic Rift is a good one. 1 and a blue, instant, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Overlord, 6 and a blue, return each to their opponent's hand. So goodbye all of my opponent's things. I'm going to finish the game here. And of course, Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshare. Premier removal in white. Both 1 mana, they exile things. Path gives a basic land to your opponent, and Swords goes ahead and gives them life. Doesn't matter. You guys know what this is. Moving on to some more instants that flicker things now. We have Parting Gust, 2 white mana for an instant. You can gift a tapped fish, which says exile target non-token creature. If the gift wasn't promised, return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. So really cool is that you can use this as removal, or you can use this on your own thing to flicker it. The flexibility here was too good not to put it in the deck. Cloud Shift is 1 white mana. It says exile target creature you control, return that card to the battlefield under your control. Eerie Interlude is 2 and a white. Exile any number of target creatures you control and return them to the battlefield under their control at the beginning of the next end step. Good old-fashioned Ephemerate, 1 white mana. Exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Also has a rebound, which means you can cast it again at the next upkeep. Essence Flux, 1 blue mana. Exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's a spirit, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Ghostly Flicker is 2 and a blue. Exile 2 artifacts, creatures, and or lands, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. And Momentary Blink, 1 and a white for an instant that says exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. It also has a flashback of 3 and a blue, so do it again. The final instants we have here are just a bit of protection, so I'm throwing in Semester's End, 3 and a white for an instant that says exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control. Remember, we do have 3 planeswalkers, so this is great. At the beginning of the next end step, return each of them to the battlefield under its owner's control. Each of them enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. So if someone is trying to wipe our board, or if we just needed to do a mass flicker effect, Semester's End here is really good. Teferi's Protection is premier protection. 2 and a white, instant. Until your next turn, your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out and you exile Teferi's Protection. You know this card. It's good. Time to move on to the artifact department. We will kick it off with some mana rocks. This will go quickly because you know these. Arcane Signet, 2 mana, tap it to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Soul Ring, 1 mana, tap it to add 2 colorless. Felwar Stone, 2 mana to tap it, add 1 mana of any color that a land your opponent can produce. You got Talisman of Progress, which is 2 mana. You can tap it to add a colorless, or you can tap it to add a white or blue, and it will deal 1 damage to you. Thought Vessel, 2 mana. You have no maximum hand size, and you can tap it to add a colorless. Some other artifacts in here that just help with the blink theme. Conjurer's Closet, 5 mana. It says at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Panharmonicon is 4 mana. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So, a bit of another Elish Norn effect. Unidentified Hover Ship is a brand new card from this set. 1 and 2 white for a 2/2 artifact vehicle. It's got flying, and when it enters, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less, and whenever it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner manifests Dread. Crew cost of 1. I don't care if our opponent manifests Dread. Manifest Dread is a new mechanic. Maybe they won't even hit a creature that they can flip over. If I'm getting rid of their creature with toughness 5 or less, that is better than them just randomly getting something off the top. And you can flicker it and get rid of something else. So this is going in the deck. The last artifact is just one singular equipment in the deck. It's Swiftfoot Boots. I was debating on Lightning Greaves, but the problem with Lightning Greaves is you can't target your own stuff because of the Shroud, so I'd much rather have Swiftfoot Boots. It's 2 mana, artifact equipment. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Equip cost of 1. Moving on to the enchantment department. Our first group of enchantments, we are going to be protecting ourselves. We want to do our thing and not be bothered. So we're going to prevent our opponents from attacking us with a little bit of a pillow fort package here. So Ghostly Prison, 2 and a white enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. We have Propaganda for 2 and a blue. This is creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. Look at that. Same exact line of text. And Sphere of Safety, which is fantastic here. 4 and a white for an enchantment that says creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. How many shards do we have? How many other enchantments do we have? I think our opponents probably aren't going to pay that cost. These next 2 enchantments are a bit of blink help. So Skybind, 3 and 2 white for an enchantment. It's got Constellation that says whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, exile target non-enchantment permanent. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this card kind of goes interestingly combo with our commander. Because this will enter, we're going to exile our commander. At the beginning of the end step, our commander comes in, makes 2 shards. Skybind will see that. We can actually target our commander again at the end of our opponent's turn. It'll happen again. Bing, 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 bing. Shard, 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 shard. It's really cool. Teleportation Circle, 3 and a white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. And finally, our last 2 enchantments just kind of help move the deck along. Smothering Tithe is 3 and a white. It says whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a treasure token. It's just able to generate more mana for us. And Darksteel Mutation, 1 and a white. For an enchantment Aura, this is enchant creature. Enchanted creature is an insect artifact with base power and toughness 0/1 and has indestructible, and it loses all other abilities, card types, and creature types. Darksteel Mutation is just really mean. Instead of getting rid of something and destroying it or exiling it, you get to keep it. It's just a 0/1 bug now. And to wrap up this video, let's go ahead and talk about these lands we're throwing in. First up, we got some utility lands. We have Hall of Heliod's Generosity. It's a legendary land you can tap for a colorless, or you could pay 1 and a white, tap it, put target enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library. Gets up the back that we needed. Ottawa Soaring City is a legendary land. You can tap it to add a blue, or you can channel this away for 3 and a blue. Discard it, return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. I felt like this was really on theme because of our blinking thing, so if you really needed to, this is also a little bit of protection to bounce something back to our hand. Or just bounce one of your opponent's things. That works too. Reliquary Tower, once again, you have no maximum hand size. You can tap to add a colorless. Rogue's Passage, you can tap to add a colorless, or you can pay 4, tap it, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Restless Anchorage, I like it in this deck. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can also tap to add a white or blue. You could pay 1 and a white and a blue. Until end of turn, it becomes a 2/3 white and blue bird creature token with flying. It's still a land. Whenever it attacks, you create a map token, which, in case you don't remember, map tokens you can go ahead and explore on a target creature. War Room is also here. Tap it to add a colorless. Pay 3, tap it. Pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity and draw a card. Good old card draw. Moving on to the lands that tap for colors of ours. A Darkar Wastes. Taps for a colorless, also taps for a white or a blue, and it will deal 1 damage to you if you do that. Command Tower, you could tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Exotic Orchard, you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent could produce. New land alert, Flood Farm Verge. I feel like you should just take one of these new lands and just swap it out with a basic. So just take a basic plains and just swap it out with this, because this is just added bonus. You can tap it at a white, or you can tap it to add a blue and activate only if you control a plains or an island. Deserted Beach enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. Tap for white or blue. Flooded Strand is the fetch in our colors. You can tap it to pay 1 life, sacrifice it, search your library for plains or islands, and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Glacial Fortress is a land that enters tapped unless you control a plains or an island. Tap for a white or blue. You got good old-fashioned Hollowed Fountain. That is our shock. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you pay 2 life. Taps for a white or blue. Henge Gate Pathway is our pathway in our colors. So you can either play it on the white side or the blue side, and it will tap for the respective side you play it on. Prairie Stream is a land that is both plains and island. Forgot to say that about Hollowed Fountain, but you read that, right? It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. And Sea of Clouds, the bond land in our colors. That's right, we are playing Commander. This is an important land in every deck. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. Also taps for a white or blue. And to round it out, we are throwing in 8 basic islands and 10 basic plains. And that is it. That is Niko Light of Hope. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I am very excited to go ahead and start building this in paper. Man, the damage that is going to be dealt, the blink effects that are going to be happening. This is a route I normally don't go with the blink, but I couldn't help it when I saw Niko Light of Hope. Comment down below, did you guys like this deck tech? If you guys wanted to see the entire deck list, check the description. You'll find that there. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already so you're staying up to date, including more deck techs. Maybe they're coming. Maybe they're, yeah, they are coming. Why am I saying maybe? I know there's more. If you guys wanted to check out our social media accounts, that's in the description as well. That's @GuysTheMagic for our TikTok, our Instagram, and our X. On the screen right now, those are all of our Patreon subscribers. Thank you guys so much for your added support. It really does mean the world to us. If you guys wanted to check out what they're seeing, which is not here on YouTube, check the link in the description as well and consider subscribing. And until the next video, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.